Hey, it's Carmel Van Niekerk, and today on our Learning from Leaders, I get to speak to Tine Fisher, who is the founder and CEO of Snap and Save, and we get to learn about how she launched an app in South Africa 5 years ago and how it's still doing so well today. So I'm looking forward to this interview, and we're going to begin. Hey, it's Carmel Van Niekerk here, and today we're talking to Tine Fisher from Snap and Save about her journey. And Tine, this is really about or for entrepreneurs who are launching apps or software as a service into the African market, specifically the South African market. And they'd love to learn from leaders who have gone before them and who have learned a whole lot of, gone through a whole lot of experience and have learned things that they wouldn't even think about. So I'd like to welcome you today. Welcome, Tine.
Thanks, Carmel. Thanks for having me.
Maybe if you could just share your personal story of how you started being an entrepreneur and the founding story of Snap and Save for us.
Sure. Well, Snap and Save has been running now for about 4.5 years. How it came about is I'm obviously not a native South African. I came to South Africa in 2010. I was living in London. I'm originally from Canada, but I was living in London for 10 years. And wanted to do something different. At that particular time, I was a global marketing director at a pharmaceutical company, and I've always really been passionate about digital and technology. And that was at the time when apps were starting to come out. And I realized and I saw how apps and technology were changing people's and particularly consumers' purchasing behavior. For example, I noticed that when my friends and I would go out for dinner, we would use digital coupons as a way of making our decision of where we wanted to eat. At that exact same time, my co-founder, Mark Bradshaw, he was in the US. He was launching Bio Oil, which is a very well-known South African personal care product. And he was launching it in the US, where, of course, coupons and FMCG advertising is very different than it is in Africa. But he obviously learned a lot, yes. So then, serendipity, we met in Cape Town, and actually the combination of our two skill sets really complemented each other. Mm-hmm. And so we decided to start a business. The precursor to Snap and Save was a beauty advisor in your back pocket. And what it was a website/app that allowed consumers looking for personal care products to enter in the things that they were looking for based on their personal criteria. It might be age, skin type, whatever, and get answers from which products would be best for them. So it's essentially, instead of going to Clicks and speaking to the beauty advisor, you could get impartial advice wherever you were in your back pocket. That morphed. That was in 2011 we started. And that then morphed into Snap and Save. And Snap and Save is more FMCG products. So if you think of anything that that you would buy in a grocery store, for example, is what encompasses Snap and Save. So that's how we've kind of ended up now.
So if you can explain to me a little bit why it morphed. Who was your ideal consumer for the first app, and did it work? Did it not work? Why did you pivot it?
I still think it was a brilliant idea. And I think that fortunately or unfortunately, myself having come from Europe, Mark having come from the US, had we been in another country, it would have worked beautifully. Mm-hmm. It was before its time in South Africa. South Africa is still to this day extremely conservative. Yes. So, and I think if I ever went back and decided to do this whole journey over again, I would not do a business that had a double-sided marketplace. Whereas our clients are large FMCG brands, but the people we deal with are consumers. So we have two sets of clients and two very different sets of needs.
So actually, that's a good thing. Can I ask you a question? Just stop there. When you're talking about like the end users who are using the app and the merchants who are, who have bought the products on, who did you go to first? Like, how did you build it up?
Well, your revenue obviously is coming from the brands. So that, but actually, and even for Snap and Save, that is one of the massive issues. When you have a double-sided marketplace, it's supply and demand. The classic case is Uber, right? So you have people who want to take a taxi and people who drive the taxi. If you have too many drivers, but not enough passengers, that's going to be an issue. If you have too many passengers and not enough taxis, people aren't going to come back and use your service. So there's this constant balance of having enough supply and demand, which is very, very challenging. It makes it much more difficult than just making a widget and selling it to someone.
Yeah.
That seems a lot easier to me.
Yeah, I see. So you're saying that South Africa is so many years behind. Like, what is the biggest technical struggle to bring out a technology product in South Africa, do you think?
Can I be honest with you? From my perspective, I'm not a coder, nor am I a computer programmer. So therefore, I look at tech very differently. I see tech as a channel, as a mechanism of either purchasing a product, using a product, what have you. And so the tech in and of itself, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can buy it, purchase it, make it. What is the rate limiting step is the client base, the people who are paying for it, and the revenue, where the revenue comes from. In South Africa, particularly, and I can speak for FMCG brands, are extremely conservative in terms of how they spend their money and how they promote. Magazines are still a big thing.
Yes.
Or, you do something that the brand manager was in your role that you did 10 years ago because it's safe. And there's not a lot of innovation. And so that has been a hurdle to get over.
Okay. So when you actually ended up launching Snap and Save, how did you go about launching it? How did you go about like changing people's behavior?
In terms of, well, consumers, actually, we've never done a lot of marketing. We have grown organically over the last 4.5 years through social media, through word of mouth. And that's a testament that actually South Africans really need a place where they can get cash back on their everyday groceries. Because, yes. I mean, economic times are tough. No matter where you are in terms of the economic scale, everybody's belts are feeling a little bit tighter. So that's a testament that consumers are really looking for something like that. And then we had some from the previous business that kind of morphed into Snap and Save. We had some really good partners that we had been working with. And it's just taken time really to be trusted, to show and actually most importantly fill a need in the I'll call them FMCG companies, but fill a need in their particular, in the gaps that they're looking for. And that's essentially what it comes down to, is that you have to solve a problem for someone. Yes. And then they will, they'll buy into it.
Okay. So who then is your like ideal customer? Is it someone who's price sensitive because they want coupons, or is it like in America where everyone wants to, save a cent or two or a rand or two here and there?
So when you say customers, we deal in two different sort of things. We have shoppers.
Your end
the end users. Okay, so that's whom we call shoppers.
Okay.
It's anybody in South Africa who has the ability to get on the internet. So an internet-enabled phone, mm-hmm. which is 80% of the population at this particular point in time. And that are looking to make their money go further. So we have a lot of our our shoppers are really very passionate about Snap and Save, and they're often sending us comments about how they use it and why they use it, and have customer testimonials. Anything from just trying to get by the month, trying to feed their family at the end of the month before payday, to people saving up for something in particular or a rainy day. So it depends. We do not, a lot of marketing teams are still really old school and look at LSMs and categorize consumers based on what they have in their house. And I think that's so old school, because it doesn't actually matter. It's about what you spend your money on and your purchasing power.
Yeah.
So, and how you choose to spend your money. And so that's what Snap and Save does, is it really taps into personal decision and making your money go farther.
Yeah, I guess it's like most people say what they want, but actually you just watch where they spend their money. That's really what they want. You can.
Well, that's it.
Better.
Do you know what I mean? Someone might, for example, have a really flashy car, but not live in a very nice house, or spend every single day buying coffees, but then eating tin soup. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's a personal decision, and it's not for us to say how people should spend their money. We're giving them the channels to be able to, and like I said, make their money work harder for them.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that we say is basically, because in South Africa over the last 2 years, the cost of bread has increased 200% more than inflation. So if the
Wow.
average person is only getting an inflationary increase on their wages, no matter who you are, everything has become more expensive.
Yes. So if your first client was the shoppers, how do you describe your second, the brands basically? Who are your ideal?
Well, we deal with brands, and like I said, anything that's in a supermarket, in a grocery store. So if you walk into a Pick and Pay or a Checkers or whatever, then anything that's on the shelf is potentially our client, if you will. Now, and what they would do is they would offer an incentivization for consumers to purchase their products, and that's pretty much what Snap and Save does. It brings brands and shoppers together and makes it retailer agnostic, because again, retailers in South Africa have a lot of power, and they dictate to the brands when and where and how they can promote. And we just don't feel that it's actually should be the retailer's position. It's actually the brands. It's how they want to promote.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah.
Sure. So you're very marketing and brand aware, and Mark, I assume, if he did the bio oil and stuff before. So how did you then get a team of technical developers to create your dream? Like, how did you bring everyone together with the right skills?
It's understanding the gap in the market. It's understanding what consumers and how, that's evolving. It's seeing what's happening in the market. How people are adopting technology. If you think of 5 years ago, how would you get a taxi? You might have to ring someone up, and now you just are looking on your phone. It's over time. So we have a development team that are continually looking at our product and updating it and looking for the newest features. But, again, and that we are a tech company in theory, but that's what I was saying, is that I feel that it's a channel. The technology is a channel. We actually are more of a marketing services company.
Okay. So, a lot of the people who are asking questions are the people who have built like an app, or they've built software as a service, and they need to get it out there. But they are so, into their own app and that sort of thing. They're not actually aware of what the end consumer actually wants. So it's quite tricky. I mean, you guys are lucky that you're more on the other side of it. You know what I mean? You're understanding, you're seeing the gap, you're asking customers what they want, and then you're building like that. But I've just noticed that in general, it's quite tricky when the people who are actually building it are very technical.
Well, that's the worst thing you could possibly do. And no offense to anyone, but as a product-led company, a lot of product developers feel that if they build it, people will come, and that just doesn't happen anymore. It actually, you have to understand who your consumers are, and that's where the concept of an MPV came about. Is that instead of building the Ferrari and then trying to sell it, you build a skateboard and then you test it with your potential clients to see if that's what they want, and that you can pivot, because then you can either pivot into a scooter or into something else very, very quickly, rather than having built it. I mean, look, I've been there. The first business we did, we built this amazing back-end system, and no one wanted to use it. So I think that the number one thing is, if I were starting all over again, rather than building this beautiful product, is you need to go do some market research and due diligence, speak to the people who potentially might purchase it. And B, if it's corporations particularly, one of the things that entrepreneurs don't think about is how to get over the hurdles in a corporation. So oftentimes the person you're speaking to is not really the decision maker. Yes. It could be a procurement team. Whereas if you have a brand new product that kind of doesn't exist in the world, procurement won't know how to measure that. How does the person you're speaking to, how do you make their life easier so that they can get through all the approval processes? There's all those kinds of things as well that are massive barriers.
Yeah. And I think another massive barrier is funding. I mean, did you guys fund it yourself, or did you get other people to fund it? And, when is the right time to get funding? Can you tell us about that a little bit? Because a lot of...
Yeah, so...
No, carry on.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, I feel like I'm like the grandmother of the tech sector in South Africa, because we started so early. There were no investors. It did not exist when we first started in 2010, 2011. We self-funded it. We were very fortunate to have had overseas jobs, so we could self-fund the development for a few years. And then in, I want to say 2014, we found an overseas investor, because that's at that time, that was all there was to invest. And that's how we morphed into Snap and Save. And we've subsequently gone through 3 rounds of funding, because now there are the 12J funds in South Africa, which provide seed funding. I could write a book on funding.
Maybe you should.
The issue, well, the issue is with funding, and I could go in so many different tangents, is that you are literally getting into bed with someone. You're forming a marriage with someone. And, you know, I would put off getting funding as long as possible, because of course there's equity stake in it. The majority of funders who are putting money into your business will take a stake of your business as well. Yeah. And then each time you get funding, you're diluted more and more. So, you know, it's a kind of a chicken and egg thing. Obviously you need the funding to grow, but it's something to consider.
So when you did get funding, I mean, it's great that you guys were able to do it for the first year or two with your own funding. But when you did actually get funding, what was the most important thing to show the funder for them to actually invest in you guys?
So I'm smiling because the criteria to acquire funding in South Africa is extremely different than the rest of the world.
Oh, really?
In the rest of the world, and I'm thinking of the US and Europe, you can quite often get seed funding based on an idea, which makes me laugh. In South Africa, you need to have revenues. You need to, and significant revenues. You need to show that there is zero risk.
How are you ever going to show that? How are you going to show zero risk?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That is the point. That is the point. If there's zero risk, then you really wouldn't need the funding in the first place.
Exactly.
So there are a lot of hurdles in South Africa. There are not a lot of sources of funding. It's increased in the last 2 years, but it's very, very difficult to come by.
So did you have to get funding if you were able to show like revenue coming in? Like, I mean, could you not have put it off for a bit longer, or were you just suddenly realizing that in order to scale, you needed a lot of money?
A bit of both. I mean, you still have costs involved, you know, and particularly in tech, you know, you've got server costs, you've got development costs. And in most of the times, those are paid up front. You know, it's not like if you can get them paid after revenue, that's great. But there's usually a lag between building the product and the revenue source. That usually, I mean, it could be anywhere from a few months to a few years.
Yes.
So yes, we did need the funding, and we also needed the funding to scale as well, and to kind of move the product more from an MVP stage into more of a technical and more developed product. But yeah, that's the issue. It's the chicken and egg thing. You need to have profits. You need to have zero risk to show zero risk. But how do you do that with no money? And how do you do that before launching?
Yeah,
there lies the issue.
So you recently went, I think, to the UK to that technical women in technology conference. What besides them funding an idea instead of like a working product with revenue? What do you think South Africa still needs, or what are we missing here for people to launch their apps and their software? What did you learn that you bring back to us?
I'm so passionate about women in tech. I help a lot of female entrepreneurs right at the start of their journey. I'm an advocate for women in tech. I do a lot of public speaking as a woman founder in the tech sector, because the percentage of women are very small in the tech sector. It's not about women necessarily, it's diversity in general. I don't think I can count the number of times that I've been in front of a investment committee. So those are the people that would decide whether or not you should get funding, that I'm the only woman in the room. And all the people sitting at the table look exactly the same. And they make decisions based on their personal opinion sometimes as well about the idea, particularly if it's a consumer product, and they're not understanding if there's a gap there.
Okay.
So it becomes quite difficult that you almost to get funding. Oftentimes it's better to go to someone who specializes in a particular sector, because they'll really understand the nuances of the sector. Mm-hmm. And you know, you're speaking to people who are looking for, you know, to build SaaS tech solutions. And there are quite a few investors now that are specializing in SaaS, which is great because then they can understand the nuances and understand the gap that you're trying to fill.
Okay. Sure. So when did what month did Snap and Save launch? Was it was in 2000?
It was 2015. So the official launch was in August.
Okay, in August. And how have you? So that's that's like 20. I mean, almost 7 years ago, hey? So
2005. Sorry, that's 2005. So 5 years.
2005. That's 15 years ago.
Sorry, excuse me, 15. 2015.
We're in lockdown, so we're like in another whole warped zone.
Exactly.
So 5 years ago, hey?
Yeah.
How have you remained relevant? Like, have you had to change a lot of stuff on your app, or in terms of what you're offering and stuff?
Absolutely. Look, the basic principle is the same: is that shoppers go into store, they purchase their goods, they take a photo of their till slip, and they get cash back into their wallet. That process has stayed a lot of the same. As a marketing person, of course, I'm very, very focused on the customer journey. And again, if you go back to the Uber situation, if you have passengers that are looking for taxis, but the taxis are dirty, they arrive late, they're never coming back. And so part of the strength of Snap and Save, particularly now, and why brands want to work with us, is because we have such a large group of people that use Snap and Save on a regular basis.
Okay.
So I have spent a lot of time on the customer acquisition journey, and as well as customer retention. So for example, if you go onto Snap and Save, we always have basics on there. We always have coupons for milk and bread and things like cheese, because we know that if those basic products are always there, people are going to come back very frequently, and then they'll see some of the other products that are there that are sponsored. And so that has come through time in terms of how do you engage people? How do you engage people on a regular basis when now on their phone, if you're using apps, for example, you might have 100 apps, and how do you stand out? So that's how you remain relevant and getting people to use you on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the way with Snap and Save, you can have like your essentials, your bread, your milk. I mean, people are going to come back. We just had to learn the tweaking the person's behavior in the first place to get them to use the app. And now, I guess, once they become familiar with it, they can just look at all the different new products that are coming on. And also, I think that you guys changed how people could liquidate, like get their money out. You added different ways of getting your money out of the app.
Yeah, so we've always had the ability to EFT yourself. We used to work with WeChat. We no longer do that. We now have a feature, because not everybody in South Africa has a bank account. So we have the feature that you can take the cash out of an ATM, a standard bank ATM, as instant cash. And then we also work with Momentum Multiply from an insurance perspective, and they are members. Have take their money and put it into their Momentum Multiply wallet.
Okay, you broke up a little bit there, but I understood it that you could get your points or your numbers, and you can put it into your Momentum wallet.
I know. Sorry, I didn't hear. I lost that because the internet wasn't great.
Yeah, I just said I lost yours, so I was just recapping that you can get your points and stuff and put it into your Momentum wallet, and you can release it from there. Is that right?
Yeah. Sorry. Can I correct you? It's not points; it's cash, and I think that's cash. A really
yes. It's so nice to not have to convert a point, and you can just literally look at. We're talking over each other. It's so nice that you can know the exact monetary value. You don't have to like sit and work out points and then convert it to cash.
But that is the point. I mean, I'm a consumer like anyone else. I go into some of the national retailers, and I don't understand the rewards program. I don't really care about points. Just make it easy for me. And why are you making me go to some machine at the front door going to print something out? I just want it inside. I want to buy something and cash back.
Yes. We're losing our signal a little bit more. I'm just going to ask you 2 more questions, if that's okay. Or maybe you could give us some pitfalls that people need to watch out for when they're launching their app?
So specifically for your audience, are they B2B solutions or B2C solutions?
Both, actually. Similar to yours, like people who are, so have the merchants as a client and the end users, the customers who are going to use the app or the software as a client. So that's why I asked you in the beginning, who do you go to first, So,
well, that is the issue, you know what I mean? Is that, large companies will want to see you have customers before they sign on. The customers need to have products, and they need to have a reason to come back.
Yes.
Often I've seen apps launch with 2 deals on them. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. It's obvious as a consumer, everybody is a consumer, you wouldn't come back to something like that.
Yeah.
My advice would be research and figure out where you're going to get your initial revenues from, and continuously pivot and review your revenue models and see where you can be changing. Just because you started off as a X, Y, and Z, B2B, potentially 3 months down the line after speaking to clients, you realize there's a new gap in the market and you pivot and you offer something slightly different. I think that's the way you stay relevant.
Basically, adapt to the market the whole time.
Yeah, you have to. And everything changes.
Sometimes it's hard for people to do because they've got an idea and they just think that that's definitely going to work. And even when one feature of the idea ends up taking off, they like almost ignore that because they still love this original one,
Well, that's where almost having like an external, I don't know if you want to use the word mentors, someone you speak to, someone who's going to give you impartial advice is really, really helpful.
Yes.
Because if, for example, if you have a particular feature in your product that is starting to come to really resonate, but actually that's not what you thought your product was actually going to do, you need someone to say, hey, no, actually that's going to be of a better way to go down. You have to be humble and you have to accept that there's, just because you produced red running shoes, maybe somebody wants purple. And so just add a bit of blue dye in there and get on with it.
Okay, I have one more question. What is the single greatest bit of advice you can give someone to accelerate their journey to get their product profitable as quickly as possible?
Profitable as a startup? I mean, all seriousness, I don't know of a startup that should be profitable, because if it's really profitable, then you could be doing more and putting that money into your business and growing in other ways. I mean, I understand what you mean. It's actually about maximizing revenues and increasing your revenues. So that's
okay. Let's say it like that. If you had to give a single bit of advice to get someone to maximize their revenue as fast as possible, what would you suggest?
Ooh, that's a tough one because it depends on who you're dealing with.
I think what you said in the beginning was quite good, that you would just try and do it as much yourself before you actually get the financial funding.
Well, I mean, exactly, because then you're 100% owner. Although, if you have good investors, they are the people who can kind of give you the real honest advice about different, decisions and way to look at your business. Again, I think it's about talking to the people who are going to pay the revenue and seeing what they think would, I'm almost having the honest conversation of, what would make you buy more from me? Or what feature do you like the best? And what is solving your problem? Those kinds of things. I've actually, our sales team, I've actually asked them to go out to our clients and say, what do you like about Snap and Save? And what do you not like about Snap and Save? And then we're getting really honest feedback, and then we're leveraging on those particular comments, and again, pivoting our offering based on those comments.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Are there anything else you want to share with us?
Good luck. It's not for the faint-hearted. Being an entrepreneur in South Africa is, if you can do it, you literally can do it and do anything, because there are so many hurdles to climb. But I think surround yourself with very smart people, with good people, and people who have connections. That really helps.
Yes, absolutely. Connections.
It opens doors.
Yes, it does. And people buy from people who they know as well and who they like.
It's about trust and reputation. Exactly. So again, if you're in a particular industry, for instance, if you're in B2B and you're in a very particular sector, presumably the reason that you have a solution is because you have been involved in that sector, whether you worked in it, whether that kind of thing. So that really goes a long way. And I would say the same for B2C. There's a reason that you would have insider knowledge in a particular sector. So leverage your contacts, whether it may not be for opening doors, but it might just be for sourcing information.
Yes, that's good. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us this morning, because it's just so nice to learn from people who've been there before. I mean, you laugh at when I say how quick can people get to be there to make their product profitable, but that is what people think that they're going to get immediately. Well, not immediately, but maybe within the first year. And it's just so never, maybe 1% of the time that actually happens.
I think that's the other thing, is I think you really have to ask yourself why you're doing it. If you're getting into business as an entrepreneur and a startup to make lots of money, you're doing it for the wrong reason. There are far too many late nights. There are far too many working weekends. There's far too much stress. If that was, I wanted to make oodles of money, I would have gone through a different channel. There are the success stories, what we call the unicorns, and that's fantastic. But I think you ultimately have to want to be master of your domain. You want to be running something. You want to be creative. You want to be, solving solutions and problems. I think that's why you need to go into it, but not if you want to become wealthy, because that's just not usually the outcome.
Yeah. So you got to be passionate about it, because you got to endure. And once the passion's gone, you got to carry on doing it. Yeah. Okay, I think we're losing our signal again. So I'm just going to say goodbye, and thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. I really appreciate it. And we'll speak to you soon.